a few tips on how to realize optimal performance of your EMR instances. So let me share my screen. I have a small presentation on the same.
How long are you meeting?
Maybe an hour.
Yeah, kindly. I don't kindly confirm if you're able to see my screen.
We see your screen.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. So I just want to take you through like a brief presentation on that talks about server optimization and why it is important. So primarily, the session will be about exploring those different tips on how to optimize your EMR server to realize optimal performance, which again results in optimal system use, because as we know, if the system is not properly functional, then the use also suffers. Maybe you'll find that users will result into retrospective data entry where they were doing maybe real time before. So if the server is dragging, then sometimes that affects use as well. So most of the time, sometimes especially for the users in high volume facilities, I've always somehow experienced a bit of degraded server performance, in a way that some users say they can't log in, the system takes longer and stuff like that. But on the contrary, you find that users from low volume facilities don't suffer from the same. Sometimes they don't even realize that the server is not properly configured, so they wouldn't even report any issues with the performance. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you properly configure the server, then in terms of user experience, users are supposed to kind of seamlessly use the system. So what are some of the signs that maybe your server is not optimally configured? You'll find that there's a performance issue. There is erratic performance. When one user is using it, it's just okay. More users starting to use it, it becomes a bit slow. When you reboot the server, when you start KenyaEMR, it takes so long to boot up. When you are logging in, it hangs. Sometimes when you submit green card or you submit some forms, the spinner just go on and on and on. It doesn't submit in a timely manner. When you are running reports, some of the reports tend to take so long to really pull the results and such like stuff. So much of the time you'll find that users do complain. So how do we go about this? How do we kind of ensure proper configuration is done? So there are a bit of areas, mainly 4 areas to look at when you are looking at the optimal configurations of your server instance. One way to look at it is to look at to check the MySQL configurations. You may want to check have a look at the Java heap space, that is the Tomcat configurations. You may want to also look at the auto backup frequency that has been identified a lot in some of the instances, especially after upgrading to 18.1 or after upgrading to Ubuntu 20.04. You'll find that becomes a bit of an issue. And again, lastly, you can also look at the behavior of the active schedulers, which schedulers are taking time, which schedulers are being left to run when that service is not in use at that particular facility. So we can explore all that. There is a reference document online. I think we'll be able to share the link before the end of this session. There's a document on how to go about all these things that we're going to do today. So maybe after this, you can take some time and take a look. Yeah, so that's like the introduction to it. Sorry. So just to start us off, we'll start with the first one, which I think in most cases is where the problem lies a lot. This is in reference to MySQL configuration. So you realize that when you're doing the MySQL configuration, allow me to share my screen again. Let me see if I can increase the font a little bit. I hope that is big enough. You guys are able to see. All right. Yeah. So you realize that when you install MySQL 5.6, most of the time, a lot of things are self-configured. They are automatically configured. You'll find that maybe the in terms of users are configured. The root user is configured when you are installing MySQL. Everything else seems pretty much configured so that you simply use it as it is. But again, if you leave it with the default settings, sometimes as the volume of the database increases, you'll find that sometimes the performance starts slowing down a little bit. So there are a couple of things to look at when you are addressing the MySQL issues. The main area to look at is the MySQL config file, which we find in etc MySQL. It's always inside here. So if I list a file, you'll find that I have my.cnf file. By default, especially in Ubuntu 20.04, you'll find that this file is symlinked to another symbolic link most of the time, where you'll find that it links to the etc alternative my.cnf. So it's always symlinked to alternative my.cnf. So what mostly happens when you're doing this configuration at the facilities that you can configure this file so well. You can configure my.cnf like you do your sudo nano my.cnf. Yeah, you can configure this file so well until you feel like you've done it. But the problem becomes when the server performance doesn't change even after configuring this file. The reason being that the symbolic link is still there, so it still refers to what was there before. So it doesn't pick up. It doesn't really pick up your your settings. Okay. So what do we do? So the first thing we do. Is to drop this particular file. Now that assumes that you have not made any configurations. The file is blank as it is. You've not made any changes on it. So this is the first time you're going to effect changes on this particular file. So what you do is, first of all, you drop that file. Okay, so that you break this the symbolic link. How do we do that? I know we know how to drop a file, so we just wait. First of all, before you drop that file, please make a backup. Things sometimes go wrong, and you might want to revert to your backup. So make a backup. You can back up by simply saying sudo copy that file. Then you just call it maybe my backup.cnf. Yeah, so that creates a copy of that file in the same location. So now if I list, we are going to find our backup right here. So it is there. So then what we do is to just drop the configuration file and then so that we break the symbolic link. Then we can now recall our backup and then paste our settings, as I'll take you through, or we can just create a new configuration file and then paste in our configurations. So what I'm going to do is just to drop that file. So I'll just remove that file. Should you have a question, kindly feel free to chat. Just write your questions in the chat. We'll address them as we go along. So I've dropped that configuration file, so I no longer have it. Okay. So then what I do, because I don't want to create a new file, I just want to bring a copy of that, the original file. Then I paste my configuration. So I simply say, I'm just copying my backup. I copy it as my.cnf. So I'm just returning the file, but remember, I've already broken the symbolic link that was there before. So it doesn't exist. So that means when I restart MySQL services, it will pick a new, it will pick up the configuration that I'm going to make. So now we have that file. So I simply go in and say sudo nano configuration file, my configuration file. So what I can do with it is that I can just clear it. There's never an easier way of clearing this file. Any way of clearing the file. Just clear line by line, unfortunately. Anyone who knows how to clear this nano editor, how to clear multiple lines, can chat on the window, so can chat so that we make our life easier. It is also a time for sharing our experiences, so that if there is something that works for you that we need to learn from you, kindly let us know.
But you know, we can work from a default. I mean,
I'm almost there.
Huh?
I'm almost clearing it. So I'll just go in and paste.
Yeah, so the easiest is to actually use gedit.
I know, but I'm working from a server, from Ubuntu server, so I don't have the gedit.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a way of selecting multiple lines. Just that's almost done. Right, so we are done. So what we are doing is that it is now blank. Don't mind about those comments up there. So I have a sample file. If you look at the screen, this is a sample configuration file, which is already well optimized. And thanks, Anthony, for sharing this. So if you look at it, it is fairly optimized for a very high volume facility. Because if you look at the buffer pool size, we have like 12 GB. And I know most of the facilities have a maximum of 8 GB. So if you go in with this setting as it is, then MySQL might break, because this is too much memory, more than the physical memory that your server has. So what you do is that you come to this particular file. We can just copy it and paste it as it is. You can just copy it and then we come and paste it as it is. Yeah, so I think, yeah, so I've copied it. I've copied it. It is a very short configuration file. Don't worry about the long configuration file we used to have. The previous one was having two sections. There was the MySQL section and InnoDB section. But from MySQL 5. I think it was 5.5 onwards, it was no longer using the MySQL. So most of it is using the InnoDB as the style. So that is what we really need to look at. We don't care about the MySQL style. Okay, so if you look at these lines, these are there are various configurations here. If you look at them, so what we do is that we just go into the InnoDB. Sorry. Okay, yeah, so as I was saying, we look at the InnoDB buffer pool size. You don't want to leave it at 12 because that's more than the physical memory, but where do you have more, please allocate more. And I think if you do a lot of Googling, you'll find that it is always recommended to not exceed 70% of your physical memory. So if you have 32, you may want to just set it at maybe 16 or maybe slightly more, but it shouldn't exceed 70% of your physical memory. So if our server is having 8 GB memory, so we can just do 4 here. Then the rest, you can just leave them as they are. Sorry?
But you know, what is this buffer pool size?
Sorry?
What is it exactly?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You want to talk slightly more about the buffer pool size?
Yeah, so basically the buffer pool size is like setting aside some space where my yeah, so look at it as the RAM for MySQL. No, but you know, you unshared your screen. Anyway, so InnoDB buffer pool size is basically that space that MySQL will use when running queries, doing its activities. So if your database is big, sometimes you want to give MySQL proper space so that you know it uses that, it loads all the data there and processes from there. That's easy. If that is just what small memories are located, MySQL will work between the RAM, what you've specified, and the hard drive. So which makes it a bit non-performant. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony, for that clarification. Yeah, so but if you look at this file, you see it has got everything that you need to set up. Where you have additional settings that you might want to include in, if you have additional parameters you want to set, you can always add more depending on how much settings you want to include for your particular instance. Okay. So once you do this, you simply save that particular file. You can do Control O for write out, or you can do X and say yes. So I'll just say Control X and then I say yes. It will overwrite that particular file. So now I have my file. So all I need to do is to restart the instance, restart the MySQL instance, and then I go in and check whether my settings have been picked. Okay, so I can just quickly restart MySQL point so that my new settings take shape. taking long to restart.
And sometimes it fails. Kwanza hii ya
Interesting.
kwanza hii.
Yeah, mine fails. Why?
Let's look at the nini again.
It's very normal for it to fail if the. Let me see.
Hii server iko na memory ngapi?
Yeah, it does less. it's a VM, so yeah, it's less. I think let me just do 2 here because it's a VM.
You can even just do 1. It's okay.
And see.
Even that has failed.
So let me just do 1.
And the server buffer pool instances, you can just set it to 1 or you can just leave it. You can comment it out.
And now we return query type to 0. Okay.
That has also failed.
Yeah, I think you must have done a lot of, you must have used your big server. My VirtualBox is pretty small. So I'll just go back to the.
No, actually, I think the ideal is to just comment out all lines and start, you know.
Small.
Yeah. You can comment out that, the big buffer pool size.
Of the troubleshooting, because I'm sure most of you have run into this to a similar situation. So if you do a lot of Googling, you realize that you need to do one setting at a time so that you know exactly which one is kind of off.
No, the connections, I think you can just leave.
That one doesn't. Even the pockets are okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just write out that. Hi.
Okay. I think you'll need to comment out the few lines at the top. So hii VM iko na memory ngapi?
You can check, but I don't think it has gone more than 4.
Oh.
I don't think it has more than 4. Yeah.
Yeah, comment out those ones. And then Otieno kidogo tu. You can uncomment that. Sorry. I don't know. You see, DB flash method, I think there is space after method.
Do we have this MySQL not commented?
No,
that's
that is the section.
yeah.
The very first line, that one. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, try saving, restarting, sorry. And by the way, when it fails, I think it shows you like how to get the actual error. System CTL status, MySQL service, nini, so that you nini.
It doesn't specify. I think let's just revert to the original file, then we'll add those things kidogo, so that we know where it breaks. So I'll just drop that file, then restore the original file and see whether it runs. Then we can start from there. So I'll just
You can rename it. You use MV, so sudo MV. Oh, Ama, you had done it. Okay, it's okay.
so that restarts very well. So let's go inside and see what's going on. So this is what we have here. This is the old file that we used to have, Kitambo. So what we can do is just to replace things inside. So Anthony, I think we can just clear what we are seeing so that we don't miss anything. I'm afraid this takes like a little longer than
It's
I
okay.
thought, but we will be fine.
You've removed.
I think I just want to leave it at this. Then I paste those other ones. I paste the new settings. I just want to pick this. Okay. Then I just make this 2. And then we try again. I think I've not touched anything else up here. We don't care about the MySum. We only need the InnoDB. Let's save this and then restart. So that goes in. So we now have our settings correctly. So we are good to go. So how do we check? How do we check that? How do we check that these particular settings have taken effect. So at that point, we log into MySQL. And we simply run, we say maybe show variables like, let's say you want to check things to do with DB buffer. You simply say DB buffer buffer anything. So we can just try anything. Then so as you realized, I did pool size at 2 GB and we have 2 GB here. So that means now it is picking from the configuration that I did. Okay, so we can pick another variables and check whether it was committed. Any variables we feel like. Let's say we want to pick, for just to save time, this is evidence enough that now it is picking from our file. So that is what we really wanted, and that is one way to ensure that the settings that you do take effect for your system to run optimally. Okay. So I hope there are questions in the chat, but allow me to go to the next area, which is now the Java heap space. So we'll just exit this and clear our screen. So most of the time we have default settings for the Java heap space, and I know when I call it Java heap space, I'll lose some people. These are the Tomcat memory settings. So we'll always go to sudo nano etc default. This is where this file is found. Then Tomcat. So if you look at this particular file, the line that we are really we are going to focus on, this is the line that is important to us, Java opt. So this is where you allocate those particular Java heap memory allocations. So we have the XMX, we have the XMS, we have the palm size, max palm size, and new size. I think there are about 6. So what happens is that this also depends on the size of the memory, the size of the physical memory that your server has. So like most servers out there, I've got 8 GB memory capacity. You'll find that most of the time you'll not go beyond 2 GB for the XMS. The same goes for the XMS, and then all through up to the new size. So what happens is that you start allocating from XMS as you graduate all the way. Most of the time you'll find that the palm size and the max palm size are more or less the same. They're always, we give them equal amount of memory size. Then the new size is always, most of the time, is 50% of the max palm size. So that's default. That is what we've always done in practice. So depending on your memory, if you have a 32 GB, then you might want to come and give maybe 16 GB under the XMX. But word of caution, as you allocate all this, please ensure that you don't exceed your physical memory. So work out the math, look at those, how you're going to balance out those allocations, but they should be way below your physical memory size. Okay, so this is the second section you want to look at when you are doing your server optimization. If you have a bigger server with a lot of memory resources, please allocate as much as you want here, but the combination of all these allocations should not exceed the size of your physical memory. So I hope that is that has been picked. Okay, if there are any questions on this, please post them. I'm not able to check, but I hope Anton is looking out for those questions around the Java optimizations. Okay.
No, I want to ask one.
Yes.
I see XMS is set to the same value. Is that the standard procedure?
No, this is not standard procedure. The standard procedure is that XMS is always slightly lower. Most of the time it is slightly lower than the XMX. So you'll find that when XMX is 2048, most of the time we give this to 1024. Then the palm size we usually give less, we give 512, and then the max palm size we usually give 512. Then the last one we give half of 512 is 256.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I think my point was that I think we can read more about this, but if you go to your server status, that is Tomcat, and you just look at how memory is allocated, more so in Tomcat 8 or 9, you'll see things like old, old generation, new generation memory. Those are the new size, palm size. You just need to understand what these are. But in summary, I think XMS is what you want your Tomcat to start operating on. And then XMX is the maximum memory allocation that Tomcat is provided. So based on your physical memory, I think you just do the math. And as people use the system, you review whether the maximum is usually hit so that you adjust appropriately. Thanks.
Thank you, Anthony. I think somebody's asking why is my.cnf sometimes in the alternative. Sorry for that. Why is it sometimes in the etc alternative instead of etc MySQL? So this is what I started by explaining, that this etc alternative, these are symbolic links. We only have one file called my.cnf, but the system creates those links. So what you do is that the moment you delete the my.cnf, all those other files all those other symbolic links will be broken. Then you create it afresh and then do your settings and then save. So that way it will be picked up as we've already seen. Okay. So this was the second area to look at. We were looking at the Java heap space, the Tomcat memory settings. So we'll simply save this and you come back to the default, the prompt. Then remember to restart Tomcat when this is done. Sudo service Tomcat restart. Yeah, so I don't want to mine now, but that is what you use to restart your Tomcat service. Okay. So the next point to look at, the next point to look at is one that is it's always easily ignored, but it kind of has the biggest damage in terms of performance. This is the frequency of the backup. Okay, so you'll find that at the facility, mostly when after upgrading to Ubuntu 20.04, personally I don't understand what happened. Maybe Anthony will be talking about that slightly later. You'll find that the settings for the backup, which usually is about twice a day, becomes almost more than 10 times a day. Okay, so you'll find that every 10 minutes it backs up, every 10 minutes your system backs up. So over time, these backups will be created in your hard disk, and over time your hard disk will become full, and then you start losing the performance. All right, so then you'll find that because of that, your system will be slowing down. So what happens is that we need to first of all look at the frequency of the backup, okay, and then update it as necessary. Then that should be one way of also ensuring that we don't get users complaining of the performance. So how do we do that? Again, we need to check at the frequency. So most of the time, if you want to look at the backup settings, it is a scheduler. It's a cron job. So we simply look into the cron job and see the frequency that is there. We can just do that by going to sudo cron tab editor. So this is it. If you look inside here, you'll find that my server is supposed to back up at 11 and at 16. So that means saa 5 asubuhi na saa 10 jioni, twice a day. Yeah, but if you check yours, if maybe you have not looked at it, you'll find that the frequency is almost set in seconds here, so that you'll find that every 10 seconds it backs up. 10 minutes it backs up. So you just need to change this back to 0, make this 11, and then make this 16. The rest of the settings, the rest of that particular syntax remain as it is. Okay, and I hope that is clear. Then something else again. Sometimes, depending on your platform, you'll find that when you do cron tab E, you get nothing. But if you do cron tab, if you do sudo cron tab E, is where you find that settings. Okay, so it doesn't hurt. If at all you find it here, make the changes here. If at all you find it in the cron job editor, make the changes there. So it's good to note that you can do sudo cron tab E, you'll find some settings. Okay, or you can do in fact, most of the time what you find looks like this. It looks like star star something like 10, 16, then something like that, then the path name. So what you need to change is this. This is what you need to change. That's what you need to change back to 0. So you need to change this star hash, / is what you need to come and change back to 0. Just change it back to 0, 0, then space, then this is 11, and then 16, then the path. You let it remain like that. So that is a way to ensure that you do your backups twice a day, as recommended in the guide. So I want to hope that is clear.
Yeah, Otieno, there is someone with a question before Anthony goes. Steve, you have a minute to ask. Steve? Steve? Okay, I think Steve must have forgotten he raised his hand, so I'll lower it for him. I think Otieno, you can go on.
Okay, somebody requested that I share the optimized file. I've just done so. You can feel free to pick the configurations and then you tweak them as it suits your platform. I don't know, Anthony, if you have anything you want to talk about the frequency of backup and why we are sticking to twice a day and not less, and how that might affect.
You know, umenichanganya kidogo. Yeah, so I think the backup script in KenyaEMR has always been executed twice a day. That is at 11 and at 4. But I think vitu kwa ground sometimes is different. What usually happens when a backup runs, you usually find that the database is actually locked, so users cannot continue working. So in that case, you'll find that if a user was seeing patients, then forms zitahang for some time until the backup finishes. And I think that the impact of that is more visible in high volume facilities, that where the process can take even up to 3 or 4, 5 minutes. It means there will be some moment of inactivity, and users will always complain. So if your users say that, okay, this system, when it gets to 11, it slows down, please just know that it's the backup, and it shows you that the DB has actually grown, and maybe, you know, the tweaks we are talking about are supposed to be tailor-made for the different facilities based on the profiles. So if 11 doesn't work, I think we can find a time that works. Yeah, Otieno, I think that's all I can add. I'm sure the people on the call have always done this, so I'll not explain maybe the changes in the template for Ubuntu 20, which you've clearly indicated.
All right. Thanks, Anthony, for that addition. So yeah, that's good. I think I didn't clearly read what the user was asking. Some users requested that if we can share standard configurations for various memory sizes. Yeah, I think that is okay. We can have that in the minute so that we see whether we can share something. Maybe the recommended memory allocation for an 8 GB machine, 16 GB, 32, all the way to 64. We can try that and maybe share later. So I hope that has gone into the minute so that we can consider it later on. Okay, so we have looked at 3 areas. So we are going to look at the last area. So the last area, the last area has nothing to do with the command. The last area is where now we look at the different schedulers, the active schedulers that are running on KenyaEMR instance. So for instance, if I'm here, you realize that what's going on here? Yeah, so let me just log. So most of you, I hope you've looked at the list of schedulers that are available in KenyaEMR. There are quite a number, and most of them are running at different times in the day, and they do different kind of tasks. They are running different kind of tasks, and we have to acknowledge that every time a scheduler runs, it executes a certain procedure, and depending on the intensity of that procedure, there is a level, there is an amount of system resources that is committed at that particular point in time. So that if that procedure has got maybe a larger footprint, then you'll find that the system will somehow slow down at that particular point until that scheduler executes and exits. Okay. Now, what happens if we have schedulers in the instance, in the KenyaEMR instance that we don't need, that we don't use at that particular point? Is it possible that we can disable them until maybe at such a time when we'll be implementing that particular module? Okay, so a good example for me is the VDOT module. It's called nimeconfirm. So on my screen, you can see I'm pointing at nimeconfirm. So I'm not very sure that all our facilities are utilizing the nimeconfirm. I know there are some that are using this particular module, but not all. So in a case where you don't use name-confirm, then it is possible then to disable the schedulers for name-confirm so that it doesn't have to keep on running without any reason, without giving you any value. So we can always turn it off as a way of saving some of our system resources. So then we free up most of the resources to do what we really need it to do. So how do we disable a scheduler? So this is how we do this. You go to the developer after logging in. I hope we're logging in. We all know how to log in. You go to the developer. So under legacy UI, is it taking long? So we go to the developer under the UI, legacy UI. Then if you look at the left side of the screen, we have a scheduler here. I hope you can see it. The manage scheduler. So we can just click on manage scheduler. Then here's a whole list of available schedulers, and the ones in green, these are the ones that are active. The ones in red are the ones that are there but stopped, they are not running. Okay. So for instance, if I'm looking at name-confirm and I know in my facility we don't use name-confirm, I can easily go to where the vdot is. We are seeing the vdot enrollment queue processor. It is started for this particular server, but it doesn't serve me. It doesn't help in our instance. So what do? I turn it off. So turning it off is easy. You can either click here and then you stop. Now that is very temporary. You realize that when you restart KenyaEMR, it will come back on. So what you need to do is to stop it, but also stop it from automatically starting when we reboot our server. So how do we do that? You click on the link, you click on the name v.enrollment queue data processor, you click on it, then you come to the schedule, then start on startup, this one. So you just turn it off, you say not true. You uncheck that box, then you save. Okay, so once you save, it is still running though, then you can now come and stop the module. Okay, so now you can see it is in red, we have stopped it. So that is how you stop a scheduler that doesn't serve your purpose. Okay, please, sorry, as you meddle with your scheduler settings, please don't change things that you're not very sure of, because somehow it might break your instance. So be very careful when you're handling schedulers, and only stop the schedulers that you are very sure. If you're not sure, please don't stop a scheduler. Stop the ones that you are very sure that this I don't use here, I don't need it. Yeah, like maybe I don't need like push v.info, push pull patient data from v. I don't need all of this. So all I do is just uncheck, save, schedule, uncheck, save. Then I come back and stop all of them. So I really want to heavily emphasize that please don't just stop schedulers anyhow. Be very sure the scheduler that you're going to stop. All right. Yeah, so that is the fourth area I wanted us to look at, and I want to hear maybe comments from Anthony on the use of schedulers and the recommendation.
And so Otieno, as Anthony comes up, Hastings is asking what it should reduce to make sure that the ETL refresh time is optimized to work best. So we are thinking beyond just say providing adequate resources to allow your server to work better during refresh. What else, or which of these particular methods would have a direct impact on that?
Yeah, so ETL, what ETL does in the background is simply to run scripts. The script for extracting, transforming, and loading. So those are sets of scripts that are really very heavy on the resources. So what happens is that it all points back to the MySQL settings, as because they are running, ETL is running queries. In the background, it runs queries, and the speed of running queries or the performance of the queries is directly influenced by the settings that we have in the file that we looked at, the MySQL configuration file. So if your configurations in the MySQL are okay, then you need to experience a bit of improvement in terms of the execution of the ETL. Okay, and that also depends on the volume of that facility. For a large volume facility like Homa Bay County Referral, it might take slightly longer to do that. But if your settings are okay, it can happen. It can happen in a slightly reduced time. Okay. Also, just to add on that again, you realize that for the large volume facilities, I don't think you need to do ETL every minute or every hour. So as Anthony would recommend, you hear that if your facility is so large, then you don't want to run your ETL all the time. You can just maybe run it once in a day because you don't report every day. You can just run it maybe at 4 p.m. in the evening when everyone has done their job. So you can schedule it to run in the evening and then let it run. The following day, watu waendelee kufanya kazi, then it runs once in a day. So that's also one way of not engaging a lot of resources that users really need for them to perform their work. Anthony?
Thanks, Otieno. So I think, let me just say that we want to rely on this team to get answers to some of the questions raised here. For example, those default configurations for 8 GB, the different capacity of RAM, I think I know we have people here who support different facilities with different RAM capacities. Maybe if they can just share those so that others can use them, that will really help. The same to the ETL. I think we can just listen to some of the things that happen on the ground, because I'm sure whenever people experience or encounter problems, they don't just sit and wait. There is one or two things they'll try out. If nothing works, I think that's when they escalate. So I would not want to respond. I just want to hear from the team.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. So we can take the next few moments to get to hear a bit from amongst us, those who have tweaked, and perhaps they can share their experiences. Any volunteers, or we can volunteer a few of the colleagues we know? Okay, I see no volunteers, so allow me to volunteer a few of you to just share with us your experiences. I see there is Duncan Obunge. I know this is something you've done previously. Could you kindly share which area you focused on? what were the results? Duncan? Otieno, are they free to speak?
Yeah, I think Duncan should raise up his hand, then I'll give him the mic. Duncan, kindly. Thank you.
Okay.
Please unmute and continue. Duncan, please unmute and continue. You are still muted. Just unmute.
Well, hello. You can hear me, Otieno?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. John, you may just need to come up again with the consent so that I'll be able to give my comments.
Okay, so Duncan, the question was, we want to get some feedback from those of you who have done some tweaks to make your servers perform better or perform faster. I know you've done one or two in your facilities. Maybe you can just share what was it, which area did you focus on? Was it MySQL? Was it backup, and so on, based on the 4 areas that Otieno shared, or if it's something else, we'd still be happy to hear it.
Okay. Maybe just to begin with the optimization of the server. I think one of the sites that we support, that is JOTRH, has been sometimes back had been having challenges with the slowness, and then what we were able to do was basically to optimize the MySQL. And in this case, when I say optimizing the MySQL, there are around 7 global variables that one may be interested to just check into when you want to optimize the server. But one most important variable is the InnoDB buffer pool variable that I was able to optimize. Anyway, I may sound technical because maybe, but the guys who are not technical, you may forgive me for that. But the InnoDB buffer pools variable, if you optimize it based on your actually what is recommended is at least you should check your server RAM. For example, if your server instance is a 8 GB RAM, it's recommended by the MySQL community that you give InnoDB at least maybe a half of that, the size of the RAM. So when I did that for JOTRH, something closer to a half, then at least that really made a tremendous change in terms of the performance of that machine. And owing to the fact that the facility has almost like around not less than 15 people using the system at the same time. So the transaction, you can imagine how frequent it is, and maybe how server is in use. So basically, that is one of the major things that maybe the team or whoever is facing such challenges may need to look into. But there are these 8 variables that if you look into the MySQL community, you will be able to figure out how to optimize them. I think that is what I would want to say in regards to optimization of the server. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to you, John.
Thank you, Duncan.
Yeah.
So, Otieno, something else you could help us with, if by default KenyaEMR is coming to backup at 11, and we know at 11, typical facilities would have been running for about 2.5 to maybe 3 hours. And that is kind of at the peak of the clinical assessment and work at the facility. Would it perhaps be better for people to work with a default like backup at 1 o'clock at 13 hours, so that is the time you basically expect people to be breaking for lunch? And so by default, even the usage could be slowing down. It's easier to explain to users. What do you advise?
Yeah, I think that's very understandable, John, because like Anthony was saying, the backup script for KenyaEMR has been designed to back up twice a day. But then in terms of distribution of these 2 hours, we can select what works best for our facility. So we can say maybe, as you have suggested, we can say maybe backup at 1 and maybe backup at 4 or 5, whichever works for the facility. So I don't think there is any written rule that you have to back up at 11 and at 4. No, these were just recommendations. But so long as you are able to set the 2 variables for backing up at 2 intervals, that's still fine. If you want to back up at 1 and at 5, please feel free, as long as you are able to identify the time when the server resources are not being utilized elsewhere. So yeah, the facilities should be at liberty to select a different time.
Okay, thank you. Could we get one more experience with regard to tweaks? Another volunteer? Any volunteer? I saw Kevin in the call. I don't know, Kevin, are you still there?
Yeah, let Kelvin raise up his hands, then he'll get the mic.
Kevin?
Or anybody else would want to contribute, just raise up your hand, then you get the mic.
Yeah. No one is volunteering. Let me just run through again. Okay, I see David Carl, but things seems like Kevin has dropped off. Any last takers? Alvin, maybe you want to share something you've done for Homa Bay CRH? Alvin?
Yes, thanks, Bennett. So for county referral, there is Homa Bay CRH. As Abunga has just said, some configurations were done, yes, on MySQL with regard to the server's resources, and that seemed to help the process. Thank you, and back to you, Bennett.
You want to share any specifics on the total memory and say what windows you're working with?
Yes, so for county referral, for their servers, they have a server that has a capacity of around 32 GB, of which MySQL, its pool size was given around 16 GB, and then the rest was distributed to Tomcat. So having that being set up for the facility helps, and also increasing the maximum transactions, because the facility has quite a number of users who use the system at the same time at any given point. So a combination of those configurations really help. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, Alvin. Otieno, did Anthony drop off?
Yeah, Anthony dropped off for another meeting.
Okay, so maybe you'll take my question. My question is, you've shown us the processes that we can stop, but I'm wondering, is there a way we can tell which of those processes are actually taking up more of the memory or of the resources from KenyaEMR? Could be VDOT, but VDOT might be a small script. Whatever is doing at the back could be very minimal. Is there a way to tell currently?
I'm not very sure if there is a way to tell how much the scheduler takes, unless you're able to really time it, and then you look at the MySQL process list and see what happens when it is running, and then you time that, which I'm sure again is a bit of a process. So I think for me, the rule is that as long as I don't use that module in my facility, then I can be at liberty to stop that schedule. But there are schedulers that are really important for the normal operation of the EMR. You don't want to stop those. Just go for the scheduler for the modules, the specific modules that you are not using at the facility. But should you want to check how much resources a scheduler takes, then you might want to set it as for a certain time. Then open up your MySQL process list, so that when it runs, you can see how much load it puts into the database. Then from there, you can easily tell whether it is heavy or not. So what you'll see is the amount of time it takes to run and the amount of resources it takes for it to run. Over.
Okay. Thanks so much. So I believe we've slightly gone overboard, but it was worth it. A quick reminder again, there is a link to the document for actually optimizing your servers that was shared at the very beginning by Otieno. Otieno, maybe you can put it up again for people just to take their time to go through the process at their own free time. I don't know if there are any other final remarks from you, Otieno, before we drop.
Not really. I think just like you said it, I'll be sharing the links to the online resources that are addressing the same things that we have looked at. So take some time and have a look at them. In case you are not very sure, please reach out to our service desk on the toll-free line that is being shared on the chat for help. So in case you experience any challenges, please let us know the service desk line. Thanks.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you for finding time to be with us. We expect to see you at the next installment on Ushauri and Nisha.